Good evening and welcome to all on behalf of the Andover Historical Society and the Andover, Washington, Rochambeau Revolutionary Committee. I'd like to welcome everyone to this presentation on the 1781 French generals, Rochambeau, and the French Army's march through Andover on their route to Yorktown, Virginia, to help General Washington and the Continental Army defeat the British and gain our independence. The reenactment of this historic event will take place on June 21st. During the evening, be sure to pick up a brochure showing the reenactors' march schedule and route. Note also the time and location for the dedication ceremony of Andover's very impressive Culture and Tourism Rochambeau marker. We have two speakers this evening. David Rhinelander, history buff, retired Hartford Courant science, medicine, and history writer, and acting first selectman, will start off describing the turbulent years of the Revolutionary War and the French contribution. Richard Swartout, Andover resident, wood turner, and part-time Revolutionary War reenactor, will follow Mr. Rhinelander and will discuss the life of a soldier in those days and will describe the march plans.
Okay. All right.
Now you want to break. David, you can take over and inform our audience on the rest of this presentation.
All right. Thank you, Irving. Welcome to an evening of history. Richard Swartout and I will speak for a while and then give you all the opportunity and the time to ask questions. My first job tonight is to tell you a little bit about colonial America and the parish of Andover at the time of the Revolutionary War, about that war against the King of England and why the French military, led by the Count de Rochambeau, joined our side. Richard will then talk about what it was like to be a soldier at that period and how American patriots and French professional soldiers were able to work together in the wilderness and beat a common enemy. We will also discuss the pivotal contribution the French Army and Navy made to the final military victory by General George Washington in Yorktown, Virginia, a victory that freed the 13 colonies to establish the United States of America. It's hard to imagine life in those colonies 225 years ago. Andover, which was not yet a town of its own, consisted of only about 30 houses. 8 of the buildings would have been seen by the French troops as they marched through in 1781 and again in 1783. But I'm getting ahead of my story. As you all know, the first wave of European settlers to establish a year-round settlement on these shores did so in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. Within 15 years, groups of English families set up their own homesteads along the Connecticut River in what are now Hartford, Wethersfield, and Windsor. And as the children of these first families married and established their own households, they moved away from the river into the surrounding wilderness. The towns of Hebron, Coventry, and Lebanon were settled in the early 1700s. What is now Andover began as a cluster of colonial houses where the boundaries of these 3 towns came together. Back in those days, everyone had to attend the Congregational church in their own town every Sunday. The roads, all dirt, were terrible back then. Nonetheless, every family had to ride their horses or wagons through the snow and the mud, no matter what the distance to the church. In 1747, the families living here, on what was the fringes of those 3 towns of origin, were allowed to establish their own congregation. which was called the Andover Ecclesiastical Society. Andover Village, which was on the main road between Hartford and Norwich and points further east, grew where the center of our town is today. Several mills, a marketplace, and 2 inns were in business at the time the French troops marched through 225 years ago. Why did the French come to colonial America? The French and the English had been at each other for decades, if not centuries. The British had humiliated the French in 1763 by winning what is called either the French and Indian War or the 7 Years' War. France lost its colonies in Canada, in the Ohio River Valley, in Florida, in Louisiana, and also in India and Africa. King Louis XVI, humiliated by this huge defeat, plotted to get back at George III. For the French monarch, the American colonies looked like a good place to challenge the British ascendancy. Ironically, it was fear of a possible French conquest of North America that had kept the 13 colonies closely bound to Britain through the 1600s and early 1700s. But as the British Crown tried to squeeze more and more money out of its American subjects to pay for the wars with France and Spain, the people here protested and finally launched their revolt in 1776. France, with more than 250,000 men in the military, was ready with the first foreign aid to the struggling revolutionaries. Although Louis XVI admitted he did not like the idea of one king aiding an insurrection against another legitimate monarch. Arms, ammunition, and clothing for the Continental Army of George Washington were shipped from France in 1777. The Continental Army put these supplies to good use, defeating British Gentleman Johnny Burgoyne and his troops at Saratoga on October 17, 1777. It has been estimated that 90% of the Americans' gunpowder fired off in that battle had come from France, as had most of the muskets and bullets. When news of that victory reached Paris, the French signed a secret treaty with the Continental Congress that promised continued aid to the new sovereign nation. A full-scale war was on. It was the Brits versus the Americans and their French allies. The theater was the North American continent. I hope many of you will read up on the American Revolution in the early 1800s. It's a fascinating period of our history. More and more is being written, much of it of truly superb quality. But I must skip ahead. King Louis approved an expeditionary force, foreign force, in January of 1780. He appointed the 54-year-old Jean-Baptiste d'Antien de Vermure, the Count de Rochambeau, who was a lieutenant general with 37 years of professional soldier experience, to command this expeditionary force. About 12,000 officers and men set sail in 1780. More followed the next year. It was a young army. Most of the men were between 21 and 27 years old. The oldest soldier was 67. The youngest was a drummer boy of only 4 years. The convoy of French ships sailed into Narragansett Bay on July 11, 1780. Many of the soldiers and sailors were sick from the sea voyage when they landed in Newport. The army wintered over in Newport to recover and prepare for the march to Yorktown. There are a number of accounts of how tense things became that winter in Newport between the Americans and the French, although about how old superstitions and prejudices flared up again. But as spring arrived, the focus shifted back to beating the British. The French military divided their forces into several units. On July 19, 1781, about 3,500 officers and men, plus a long string of wagons and contingents of various camp workers, road repairmen, engineers, and others, crossed into Connecticut from Rhode Island at the Connecticut town of Sterling. To avoid marching in the heat of the day, the regiments would get up early. Reveille was around 2 a.m., and the troops would be on the road by 4 a.m. They marched an average of 12 to 15 miles a day, reaching their next campsite about noon. Soldiers' diaries are full of accounts of lots of hearty food and evening dances to the music of the regimental bands with the, quote, beautiful maidens of Connecticut. The first of 4 French regiments arrived in Andover the morning of June 21st, marching from Windham and Columbia down what is now Route 87, and then along Merritt Valley Road, Center Street, Hutchinson Road, and then up Bailey Road into Bolton. It was undoubtedly the greatest show Andover had ever seen. Back then, as I've said, there were few houses in this town, but acres and acres of woodlands and open fields. The troops camped in Bolton that night. 3 more regiments passed through, each separated by a day. A footnote. Generals Washington and Rochambeau actually passed through Andover several times in 1780, 81, and 82 as they prepared for the war and then met to finally say goodbye after the English were defeated. The Comte stayed at the Daniel White Tavern on Hutchinson Road, now the home of Dale and Lorraine Busk, at least 4 occasions. Let me fill in a few details about the final victory and the departure of the French troops. The War of Independence could not have succeeded without the French, the land troops of Rochambeau, and the naval blockade of the French Navy. Rochambeau's foot soldiers, joined by the cavalry under the command of the Duc de Lauzerne, passed through Connecticut into New York State and joined the Continental Army in Phillipsburg, New York, on July 3, 1781. The French regiments had covered 220 miles on foot in 11 days. Their officers said the troops had marched through in, quote, perfect order, with perfect discipline, setting an example which neither the English nor the American army had ever furnished. After 6 weeks in Philadelphia, the combined armies set out for Yorktown. British General Lord Cornwallis was surrounded on land by the combined forces and cut off by the sea by the French Navy under the command of Admiral de Grasse, which had set from the West Indies to seal off what is now the Chesapeake Bay. General Cornwallis, with 8,000 British troops, was pinned down by an Allied force of 17,000. The British surrendered on October 19, 1781. One very quick footnote. The French troops retraced their steps back to Newport, passing through Andover once again in the Now Richard will tell you what it was like to be a soldier back then, and it really wasn't until World Wars I and II and the plans for his United States to retrace the path of the French step by step what they had contributed to the independence, the Yorktown of this nation, and to victory over the British.
Hello, everyone. Can
Hello.
you hear me without that?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Richard Swartout. I live here in Andover on Route 6 and moved into town about 8 years ago and found that I moved into the old brass house right on Route 6 out near Parker Bridge Road. Turns out Dr. Brass wrote the town history. Does history grow up in the same houses? I don't understand. I kind of walk into I buy a house and it turns out the town historian wrote the history. I thought that was rather curious. I have been involved in history and in reenacting for about a dozen years, mostly through a family connection. My family came here to this country in 1652 to Manhattan. Eventually moved up what was then the North River, it's now the Hudson River, up to as far north as Saratoga. Given that family lineage, my family seems to have fought in almost all of the wars of this country, up to and including the Vietnam era, of which I was a partner. I don't think we have anybody in my immediate family, brothers, who are now in Iraq or were at Desert Storm, but there may be a sword out over there that I can't speak about. Given that family lineage, I'm a member of the Sons of the American Revolution, in the Society of Cincinnati. I'm a past American Legion Post Commander in Madison, Connecticut for 3 years. And that brings me to reenacting 1990.
June 21, when Richard and his troops, Merry Band will actually march through. We're going to give them luncheon at the, I think at the church, is that
Yep,
right?
at the church.
And then they're going to go on the boat and they're going to come back, and there's going to be a pig roast that night for one and all.
Oh, that's going to happen.
I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say this because I'm only a guest, okay?
Yes,
My
it
wife
will
Annie knows
happen.
this good. So it is here, and we'd love to have you come, because this is, and in fact, they will be marching the side of the road, and if any of you guys want to dress up, or even not dress up, you can join them.
Are you passing those out?
Yes. Yep.
We'll be camping overnight. First of all, there's only a couple people actually doing the walk, and there's a couple of us driving support vehicles. I would have hoped for more, but I'm probably glad that I don't have more. But I think what I'm finding out is that towns along the way are saying, well, you need a permit to walk in town. As far as I knew, this was still America, and you didn't need a permit to walk into town. It's very curious what we've been running into. We just try and have a couple of folks walk along the road or along the sidewalk. You would be amazed. It's been a real eye-opener. However, the schedule for Andover is that we will be camping overnight in Wyndham, just west of Wyndham Village. You know, the center of the village there, that big intersection, they have a very small green and all those lovely 18th century homes that surround that. And normally when you're coming into Andover, you would take a right there down into Willimantic and then come out on Route 6. But if at that intersection, instead of taking a right and coming down into Willimantic, if you went straight, you go by the St. Paul's Episcopal Church there, the beautiful stone church with a big arch. And you go down the road about a mile and you come to the Shetucket River. And that's where we'll be camping the night before we walk into town. Here. We will have walked from Plainfield that day to that camp on the river at Shetucket. Our plan then is to leave there. We haven't worked out when we're walking. We're not probably going to be walking from 4 to 11 like the French did. That would be the smart thing to do, but kind of defeats the purpose of trying to highlight this whole event. So we're probably going to be leaving in the morning, perhaps around 8 o'clock. And we'll be leaving the Shetucket River, and as we come into Andover, we end up going out Old Willimantic Road, or coming off Old Willimantic Road onto Route 66 for about a quarter mile, where the intersection of 66 and 87 are. And we're going to turn right on 87. And the original road trail is now covered up by Columbia Lake.
Oh, that's right.
We don't know where all the rocks are, so we're not walking through the lake, okay? We're not gonna do that.
I know, that's right.
We're gonna come down 87 to Route 6, and then go left on Route 6. And here, for any of you that have an interest, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, seeing anybody who thinks you want to join in with us while we're in your town, and we are running into a lot of that. The good thing about having a small number doing the traveling is that we're actually acting as a lightning rod for a lot of community groups that maybe just want to join us in their town. And that's fine. That's what this is about. It's really what this is about. I can't imagine trying to do the logistics for 24 people trying to do this march all the way. I'm having enough trouble convincing the communities that, you mean we need a permit to have 2 people walk down the sidewalk? I don't think so. So when we get into Andover and we get down, we come down the hill on 87 to the intersection with 6, and we're going to go left. We're immediately going to turn off onto Merritt Valley Road. That dead end there, the little, they didn't even cul-de-sac that end of it yet. It's just kind of dead end. But we're going to move off 6 because it's 6. I don't necessarily want to be walking on 6 if I don't have to. And we'll go on Merritt Valley Road until it comes out the other end at a small cul-de-sac. So it comes out almost down to where the old creamery building was. Almost that far. We're probably, instead of coming down onto 6, we're going to get up on the rail trail and take the rail trail, hopscotch from Merritt Valley. We can see 6. We know that's where they walk. We can see it. We're not so far away that we're really off the beaten path. Take the rail trail, come down onto 316, go up 316, what's that, about 200 yards maybe, and take a right on Center Street. And Center Street ends and it comes out a little path just about across the street from the Congregational Church. And we've been asked to stop at the Congregational Church and have refreshments. And I'm sure we're going to need them by that time. I don't know at this point how long that's going to take. I do know that it's 11 miles from the camp in Wyndham to the Congregational Church. If we're marching 2 miles an hour, it's going to take us 5.5 hours. So I'm thinking somewhere between 1 and 2, we're probably going to be getting there. And we would really love to see anybody who wants to come out for a nice, let's hope it's a nice day in Andover. And not 2 weeks of rain like we just said. That's probably not so bad in July. But if you want to walk with us, walk with us on that area that's protected. And if the school kids want to come out, that's a good place to walk. Merritt Valley Road, down 316, and off of that, we'll go over to the church. Then we'll go back up onto the rail trail and follow the rail trail, I think, down to Burnap. Is it Burnap?
Yeah.
Burnap Brook Road. Cross Route 6, and there's the Post Farm. Is that the name of that?
Yeah.
The Post Farm is right there. And we'll immediately veer off 6 and take the old Hutchinson Road, which, by the way, is, as far as I know, the original, that's one of the original places that they walk. And we're going to go by the Daniel White Tavern at the sign of the Black Horse. That's that house down there, built in 1773. The sign isn't out there anymore, but history says that was Daniel White's Tavern at the sign of the Black Horse. And we're going to march, past that, down to the cul-de-sac where the refashioned cul-de-sac is now, where the boulder that used to have a plaque on it and was out on Route 6, the boulder is now down in that cul-de-sac, and the plaque is facing away from Route 6. So if you want to see a little, there's a plaque on a big stone down there that talks about the French camp when the French marched back. It's camp number 48. But we're heading that day to camp number 5, going to Yorktown. And no, don't even think it. We're not marching back, okay? We're only walking down there. We're not walking back.
Yes, God.
This is forget. Oh, you guys gonna walk back? Are you crazy? We're gonna be lucky to get there. Never mind, you turn on the back. Then we'll cross the road and go up to Bailey Road. Go up Bailey Road, I think it is, which is across from that. Get on the rail trail and take that rail trail up to Steel Crossings Road.
This
And
is in
then
Bolton.
come off onto Steel Crossings Road, go up to Bolton Center Road, hang a right, and maybe all of you know that Rose Farm there, a big farm right on that hill, right on the right-hand side, is camp number 5. That's where the French camped, in that area. On the Rose Farm, the town of Bolton, I believe, just passed a referendum to buy that farm so that it would not be developed.
It did.
So we then think that, okay, we're hoping that some of you will walk along with us as we're coming through town here, because this is almost the most protected walk along the whole way. I mean, there's no sidewalks in this town. But we got a rail trail, that's a pretty nice walk, you know. So that's very protected. You want to bring out your kids, please do. Come out and join us. It'll be a hoot. We'll have refreshments, I think, at the church, and then there's some talk about a dedication ceremony
Yeah,
at
I can, let me,
4:30.
I can fill that in. I think it's 4 o'clock. This sign that is on this side of the handout, the state has produced 12 of these signs that will mark the Rochambeau route across the state. We have one of them, and it's gonna go in more or less in the intersection of Route 6 and Hendy Road, the exact spot we haven't figured out yet. The state has given us the sign, we just have to, dig 4 post holes, and you got a backhoe, and maybe, and we'll have a dedication. Whether it's in its permanent location or not, we're not quite sure, but we'll have a dedication. We'll get some town people, some government, state government people, some historians and all, and we'll have a ceremony.
Or maybe it'll just be us.
And then, no, we'll get a few.
This is not a permanent sign.
Well, yes, it is a permanent sign, yeah. They're very nice. As I said, there'll be 12 of them.
We don't know where
at
it's
Christmas.
going there on Hendy.
Well, somewhere on the Hendy Road, Hutchinson Road intersection, and the Route 6 intersection, we're negotiating with property owners in that corner to see the best place to put it. And then after that, these guys are gonna go on to Bolton, they'll be in Bolton, and then you guys are gonna come back, and we're gonna have a picnic, a pig roast picnic on Post Farm Meadow, is that where it's gonna be? On Hendy Road?
No, Monday, we should figure out exactly where.
Oh, we don't know yet, right.
Okay. And possibly we're camping that night in that, somewhere there.
Yeah.
But I'm
You're camping
hoping
on
to
Post
be
Ave.
camping there maybe for 2 days, 3 days. That's a possibility.
So you'll see this guy probably more than you
You'll
want
be
him, but
tired
that's all
of
right.
me, yeah,
That's all
you'll
right.
be tired.
These damn French, we'll get rid of you eventually, right?
No, you won't. No, you won't.
Anyway, you're you really are welcome. This is gonna be a major piece of history. Now, questions?
Questions about anything, yeah?
Just remember, they didn't have Lyme disease back then.
That's true. That's true.
Interesting you should say that.
Don't get ticked off, that's right.
4 years ago, when I moved my shop onto my property, I'm a one-man wood turning shop. My shop's in the yard. In the process of moving, I was tick bit.
Were you?
And I came up with something called ehrlichiosis, not Lyme disease, which, when you go online and read about it, you don't want to have it. And last year, I was tick bit again and contacted ehrlichiosis again. I can't say for sure whether I was bit. I never saw either bite, never got the big mark or any of that. So, just as an aside to you all, ticks have been really bad.
Yeah.
And if you're sick and nobody else is, and you can't figure out why, you better go think about you've been tick bit, because that's what happened
Yeah.
to me.
I heard you say that the youngest person you had on record for the war was 4. And I wondered what the job or the importance of the job of that 4-year-old drummer would have
He
been.
was a drummer boy?
He was a drummer boy, and all the regiments had music with them, and, they just had a little, I can't imagine a 4-year-old, carrying a drum that was this high, but he was in fact a drummer.
He was getting paid as
Yeah,
a drummer boy.
that's- yeah, he
And
was a
he would have
French-
been paid
Yeah.
corporal's pay
Were,
in the American Army. I don't know about the French Army,
I had read somewhere about them being able to drum signals, like when they would begin firing or retreat.
Yeah, there were no, no semaphore, no
No cell
flashlights,
phones,
no
no
cell
cell phones
phones, no walkie-talkies. On the battlefield, the drums were the only thing that could be heard over the firing of the muskets. And they used the drums as signals, and there was a certain pattern of drumming that would tell the regiments to move or not move, go forward, go back. A good commanded regiment with an orchestra or band and a drum line may not ever hear its commanding officer shout an order. They just point to the drummer. Right face, left face, forward march, halt.
And bugle calls, too, they had different bugle calls to send out information.
So, yeah, that's, a 4-year-old drummer boy, I'm sure somebody who's just getting fat off his paycheck, I think.
Hey,
I
his
can't
parents
imagine
were
it.
probably both in the army, so
Yeah, that's
I had
right.
to take him along.
Any other questions? You feel free, about the march, about the current march?
Well, you know,
What was the encampment in Coventry? Was that on the trip back? French troops that stayed in Coventry?
Repeat the
In
question.
Coventry, what I know about the trip back
I don't think there was.
is that they
but-
camped in what we now know as Andover, Camp 48, down over there by the cul-de-sac off of the other end of Hutchinson Road. That plaque, you look out on that field there, and apparently, all those plaques will say in this vicinity. They don't know exactly where, but somewhere there was this camp. And as David was saying earlier, that may have been the town of Coventry's property in 1780, but it became Andover in 1848.
There were several French soldiers buried in the Coventry old burying ground.
Right.
But I don't think that they were, I don't remember, I went to that ceremony years ago. I don't believe they were casualties, in that sense. I don't think that.
They died of sickness.
Yeah, I don't think the troops actually camped in Coventry, but other people may have a better, I just don't think they went that way. I think they turned towards East Hornford at that point. But they are buried there, and we had a ceremony years ago, several years ago, marking the graves. It was, that almost began this whole thing, because from there, the whole, momentum built up to commemorate this event.
Didn't Silver Lane get its name from the
Yes.
French bringing the pay roll down Silver Lane in
Yep.
silver?
Rochambeau opens his chest on Silver Lane.
That's right. Some of it fell out, there was Silver Lane after that, right?
Rich, how many people have you got committed now? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was pointing to the lady in the back, sorry.
I was gonna ask if Bunker Hill got its name during the Revolutionary War, was there a
Bunker Hill Road here in town?
Yeah.
Good question, I don't know.
Where's that history?
Look up Phil Brass's book.
Would you mind copying this history book?
Yeah, see if Phil. See if Phil has an answer.
Not in there?
I don't know.
Now, I have a friend who lives in Canada, Bunker Hill.
Yeah, I know.
I have no idea about the local history. And oddly enough, the battle for Bunker Hill was really took place on Breed's Hill. Bunker Hill was the one that was further back that we retreated over once we ran out of ammunition. That battle, what we called Battle of Bunker Hill, which historically was the Battle of Breedsburg, cost the British 48% casualties, the largest loss they ever sustained in the battle of the American Revolution. And that was when we really didn't have an army then. It was all those militia guys, and the British did 3 attacks up that hill. And the Americans had run out of musket balls. Had they had 1 or 2 more musket balls each, the war probably was over then. Would not ever have gotten started. They ran out of ammunition because they had repulsed two British attacks up there. Enormous loss to the British. Enormous. The officers were furious with the command because they were still sending people up this hill. They were just getting killed left and right. So we ran out of ammo. They finally overran the lines on the third try up the hill. And that was Battle of Breed's Hill, Bunker Hill. And I had no idea about its connection to the road in town. Bunker might have meant something at a time. It might have had another meaning for an industry, maybe.
It's not.
Maybe there was a mill there or something. I don't know how that refers to. But there's more than one bunker. Bunker Hill, much to my surprise.
How many reenactors, what's the current count of reenactors that we are expecting to come through town?
Well, that really hasn't changed much.
A couple?
Yeah. We have 2 to 4 people committed to doing the march. 2 that I know for sure are going to go all the way from Yorktown to, all the way from Providence to Yorktown.
Really?
But like I said, what I'm finding is that we have people telling us that they want to join us for a week or a weekend or a day. And that's fine with me. I mean, that logistically, just dealing with 6 or 8 of us on the road is a situation that we can handle. Anything more than that, when you come into Connecticut from Rhode Island on 14, and it's a 2-lane road, and the traffic is going 55, 60 miles an hour, and it's like old Route 6. And there's no place to run and dodge. You got about that much as a walking lane on either side. I'm really glad not to have 24 people. I would have liked to have had 24 people. I'd like to come into Andover with flags flying and have 500 people. But I think what we're really going to have is a couple.
1,000.
And, I'm getting emails all the time from folks who want to join us here, there, and everywhere.
Wow. You can watch.
You didn't hit on the fact that approximately 25 years ago, they did have that parade down Route 6. And there, if I remember right, I saw it, I would say there was around 20 people or so. I don't know, maybe it was a little less.
Oh, when we're doing in Andover, maybe we'll have 20 people moving
I
along.
was not paying attention to that one.
I've heard, I was not doing.
I don't know, maybe somebody here remembers it. I remember it because I lived in Bolton at the time, and I lived near Route 6.
No, I mean, we may be surprised, but right now, I mean, I get the occasional.
I think it was
somebody who says,
It was
"I joined it."
bicentennial.
I think it was the bicentennial parade, right, the fire department.
They had quite a few people, if I remember.
Yeah, there was a big whole lot of fire trucks and that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was quite a bit.
Right down Route 6.
Yeah, they did. You're right. That's so true.
Well,
Any other questions?
Any other
Yes.
questions?
I have 2.
2.
Well, first, while you're doing your march, where are you guys going to be staying, and how are you going to be eating and living your lives along the route as those who are walking?
Arnold Carlson put it very well to me about a month ago. Arnold was here a little earlier. He says,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're going to live off the land, eh?" And, yeah, I think so. We already have committed invitations to camp at Waterman's Tavern in Rhode Island, in Plainfield, in Wyndham, a possibility here in Andover. We'll be camping on the Bolton Green the night of Wednesday the 20th for the end of our march there.